At Marika Tales, we champion the power of narrative. Our scripts artfully blend profound emotions with dramatic arcs, dispensing justice where it's most desperately required. Immerse yourself in enthralling mysteries where truth ultimately prevails, leaving an indelible imprint on your heart and intellect. I was left by my parents at the age of 11. They favored my older sister, taking her with them and leaving me to fend for myself for 6 days. My affluent uncle discovered me and rescued me. 20 years later, upon my uncle's passing and his bequeathing of an 8.7 million estate, they reappeared. They attended his funeral, feigning grief. They were present for the will reading, their eyes alight with avarice. The lawyer read my uncle's will. They had abandoned her. They merit nothing. They protested loudly. I observed in quiet triumph. It's wonderful you're here. Before we commence, where are you viewing from? Share your location in the comments. Please note, this narrative contains fictional elements for your entertainment. Any parallels to actual individuals or locations are purely coincidental, but the message concerning family and justice is unequivocally genuine. Let us begin. The cursor pulses on the blank screen. Outside my apartment window, Seattle's January rain taps a persistent cadence against the glass. It's the same somber, unyielding rain that has characterized every winter I've experienced in this city. 20 years. 20 years since everything shifted on a November afternoon much like this one. When I grasped that family isn't solely defined by blood, my fingers poised above the keyboard. The document is titled, Found a Memoir by Maya Lawson. I am now 31 years old, a journalist with the Seattle Times, and I have chronicled countless stories about strangers, injustice, and individuals whose voices deserve to be amplified. However, this particular narrative has resided within me for 2 decades, awaiting its moment. It is time to recount it. November 2005, I was 11 years old. I awoke to an absolute stillness. That is my most vivid recollection. Not the absence of my parents or sister, but the very quality of the silence. Our residence on Capitol Hill was rarely quiet. Dad's talk radio invariably resonated from the kitchen by 6:30 a.m. Mom's heels would click across the hardwood as she prepared for work. Vanessa, my elder sister, would be blow-drying her hair, singing off-key to whatever pop song was playing. Yet, that Tuesday morning, there was nothing, only the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of traffic on 15th Avenue. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, the bare wood of the floor chilling my feet. Mom. No response. Dad. The kitchen was deserted. Impeccably clean. Too clean. No breakfast dishes, no coffee cups, no indication anyone had been present at all. My backpack rested by the door where I had left it the previous night, but Vanessa's was gone. That's when I discovered the note. It was affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like the Space Needle, one of those tourist souvenirs Mom had acquired when we first moved to Seattle. The handwriting was my father's, hurried and careless. And we will return shortly. 4 words. No elaboration, no expressions of love or reassurance. Merely a pledge that even at 11, I intuitively understood to be false. I stood there, gazing at that note for what felt like an eternity. Subsequently, I prepared myself a bowl of Lucky Charms cereal. That's all we had. And I consumed it at the kitchen table alone, convincing myself this was ordinary. Perhaps an emergency had arisen. Perhaps Grandma was unwell and they had departed prematurely. Perhaps they would be back by the time I returned from school. I attended school. I returned home. The house remained vacant. The first day, I waited. I completed my homework. I watched television. I repeatedly checked my mother's cell phone number, but calls went directly to voicemail. The same for my dad's. The second day, I began to feel a sense of dread. I dialed Vanessa's phone. She was 16 and had just received it for her birthday, but it was disconnected. I searched the house for any hints. Their bedroom closet was half emptied. Vanessa's room gave the impression of having been ransacked. Drawers left ajar, clothing gone, her favorite posters ripped from the walls. The third day, I walked to the library after school, reluctant to return home to the silence. I sat in the children's section, pretending to read until the librarian, a kind lady with gray hair and spectacles, inquired if I was all right. I responded with a falsehood, saying yes. The fourth day, I began consuming whatever remained in the pantry. Crackers, peanut butter, a can of soup I heated on the stove, terrified of setting the house ablaze. The fifth day, I ceased attending school. I feared that if I left, they might return and I would miss them. I feared that if I left, someone would notice my solitude and remove me. Consequently, I remained. I waited. By the sixth day, I understood. They were not returning. The rain had commenced once more. Typical Seattle, November weather. Gray, cold, and unending. I had exhausted my food supply, save for a box of stale crackers. So I made my way to the library again, hoping perhaps Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, would offer me another granola bar, as she had the previous day. She did. I ate it slowly, prolonging the experience, and then remained until closing time, rereading the same chapter of Bridge to Terabithia, repeatedly, without absorbing a single word. When the library finally closed at 6 p.m., I had no alternative but to go home. I walked slowly, my backpack a weight on my shoulders, my hands plunged deep into my coat pockets. The streetlights were just beginning to illuminate, casting elongated shadows across the damp pavement. I turned onto Belmont Avenue, counting the cracks in the sidewalk, a game I used to play with Vanessa when we were younger. That's when I heard the car. It was a black sedan, moving at a leisurely pace, almost cautiously. Initially, I presumed it was merely someone searching for a parking space. Parking was perpetually scarce on our street. However, it then drew alongside me and halted. The window descended. Maya. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. Every stranger danger lesson I had ever received urged me to flee. Yet something in the man's voice made me hesitate. It was familiar. Not precisely comforting, but not overtly menacing either. I took a step back, peering into the car. The driver was a man in his mid-40s, with dark hair beginning to show streaks of gray at the temples, and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a suit, navy blue, slightly rumpled, and he appeared concerned. "Maya, it's me," he said gently. "Your Uncle Dennis." Uncle Dennis. The name registered in some distant corner of my mind. My father's younger brother, the one residing in Seattle, the one we saw once annually at Thanksgiving perhaps. The one who consistently inquired about my schooling and genuinely listened to my responses. I gazed at him, and something within me fractured. "They're gone," I whispered. He nodded slowly, his expression shifting from worry to a look that resembled anger, not directed at me, but at them. "I know," he said. "Get in, Maya. Let's get you somewhere warm." I should have posed questions. I should have demanded to know how he found me, why he was present, where my parents were. But I was 11 years old and I was so profoundly weary of being alone. So, I entered the car. I was unaware of it then. However, that instant, that decision, would alter everything. The stranger in the black sedan, the uncle I scarcely knew, would become the sole father figure I would ever truly have. But that's a later part of the story. The car exuded the scent of leather and coffee, smooth leather, the kind devoid of creases or blemishes, and freshly brewed coffee from a travel mug resting in the cup holder. The dashboard emitted a soft amber glow in the diminishing daylight, and the radio played softly, a jazz station, mellow and unfamiliar. I nestled against the passenger door, my backpack clutched on my lap as if for defense, observing this man who identified himself as my uncle, Dennis Grayson. Dad's younger brother, the one who achieved success in Seattle, the one Dad mentioned only when intoxicated and resentful, usually accompanied by phrases like, "He thinks he's superior to us," or, "Too good for family." If he was too good for family, why was he here? "When was the last time you ate?" Dennis inquired. His voice was low and measured, as if he were attempting not to startle a feral animal. I reflected on the granola bar from Mrs. Patterson, the crackers for breakfast this morning. I lied. He glanced at me, and I detected a fleeting expression in his eyes. Not precisely pity, but something more acute, akin to anger. Yet, it wasn't directed at me. "Right," he said softly. "Let's rectify that." He put the car in drive. We didn't return to my house. Instead, Dennis navigated through Capitol Hill, descending Broadway with its vibrant storefronts and cafes, then heading west towards Belltown. The city streamed past my window, a blur of people under umbrellas, buses arriving at stops, the orange luminescence of streetlights reflecting off the wet asphalt. I should have been frightened. I should have demanded answers. Where were my parents? Where was Vanessa? Why hadn't anyone contacted me? But I was so weary. Weary of fear. Weary of solitude. Weary of feigning well-being. "Your father didn't inform me," Dennis stated abruptly, "that they were planning to depart." I looked at him. Do you know where they went?" His jaw tightened. "Florida. Your father called me 2 days ago, said they needed a fresh start." He uttered the words as if they had a bitter taste. "He asked me to check on you." 2 days ago? They had been gone for 6 days, and Dad had only contacted Dennis 2 days prior. "Did he say when they're coming back?" My voice faltered. Dennis remained silent for a considerable moment. Then, "No, Maya. He didn't." The stark reality settled upon me like the rain. Inevitable. Inescapable. They had abandoned me intentionally. And Dennis, the uncle I barely knew, was the only one who had appeared. The 5 Point Cafe occupied a corner on Cedar Street, a modest diner with neon signage in the window, and an aroma that made my stomach rumble the instant we entered. Bacon, coffee, toast, food. "Sit anywhere," called a waitress with fiery red hair and a weary smile. Dennis selected a booth towards the rear. I slid into the cracked vinyl seat, my backpack beside me, still clutching it as if it might vanish if I released it. "Order whatever you like," Dennis said, presenting me with a laminated menu. I stared at it. Burgers, pancakes, eggs. When was the last time someone had told me to order whatever I desired? "I'm not very hungry," I whispered. Another falsehood. I was famished. Dennis set down his menu. "Maya." He waited until I met his gaze. "You don't have to pretend with me. You're 11 years old. You've been alone for almost a week, and I'm guessing you've been subsisting on crackers and whatever else was left in the pantry. So let's forgo the pretense of acting like you're fine. All right?" My throat tightened. I nodded. "Good. Now, what sounds appealing?" "The pancakes," I said, as if posing a question. "Then get the pancakes, eggs and bacon, and orange juice." He signaled the waitress. "She'll have the breakfast combo with extra bacon, and I'll have the same plus coffee." The food arrived swiftly. Stacks of golden pancakes, crisp bacon, scrambled eggs, and a glass of orange juice so cold it made my teeth ache. I ate slowly at first, attempting politeness, but then hunger asserted itself, and I simply ate. I ate until my stomach no longer ached, until the persistent emptiness finally subsided. Dennis remained silent. He simply sipped his coffee and observed me with that same cautious expression, as if he were trying to decipher a puzzle. Why didn't you tell anyone? He eventually asked. Why didn't you call someone? A teacher? A neighbor? 911? I nudged a piece of pancake around my plate. I thought they'd come back, I whispered. And if I told someone, they'd take me away. Put me in foster care or something. I thought if I just waited. You thought they'd come back for you? I nodded. Dennis's hand tightened around his coffee mug. When he spoke again, his voice was low and controlled. Your father made a choice, Maya. A terrible, selfish choice. But you didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me? You didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I wanted to believe him. We returned to my house afterward. Dennis waited in the car while I packed clothes, books, my toothbrush, the stuffed bear I'd had since I was 6, which I was probably too old for, but couldn't bear to leave behind. The house felt even more desolate now, as if it recognized I wouldn't be returning. I unlocked the door with the spare key hidden beneath the mat, and Dennis drove us across the city to Queen Anne. His house, if one could call it that, was situated on a quiet street lined with old trees and expensive automobiles. It was tall and narrow, painted a pale blue with white trim, the kind of house I had only ever seen in films. This is where I live? I inquired. Yeah. He retrieved my backpack from the trunk. Come on, I'll show you your room. Your room. Not the guest room. Your room. The room was located on the second floor, painted a soft gray with a large window overlooking the street. The bed was impeccably made with crisp white sheets and a navy blue comforter, and a desk stood in the corner, bare and awaiting. It was clean. Impeccably clean. Like a hotel room. The bathroom is across the hall, Dennis stated. Towels are in the closet. If you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall. He paused in the doorway. You don't have to be afraid, Maya. You're safe here. I nodded, my voice a traitor. He departed, and I stood in the middle of the room, still clutching my backpack. Slowly, I set it down. I removed my shoes. I sat on the edge of the bed, cautiously, as if the mattress might collapse if I moved too quickly. I remained there for a considerable duration, too apprehensive to lie down, too afraid to wrinkle the pristine sheets. I'm uncertain how much time elapsed, perhaps an hour, perhaps more, before I heard footsteps in the hallway. Dennis reappeared in the doorway, now clad in sweatpants and a faded University of Washington t-shirt. He observed me, still sitting upright on the edge of the bed, my hands folded in my lap. A faint, tired smile touched his lips. Are you going to sleep sitting up all night? Morning light diffused through the kitchen window, casting a soft golden hue over everything. I stood in the doorway, watching Dennis pour orange juice into a proper glass. Not plastic, not a coffee mug, but actual glassware, the kind that appeared both expensive and fragile. He placed it on the kitchen table next to a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Are you hungry? He asked without looking up. I nodded and slid into the chair, my hands clasped in my lap. The glass sat before me, gleaming. I didn't touch it. Dennis noticed. He always noticed. He sat down across from me, his own coffee mug in hand, and gestured to the glass. It's for you. I know. My voice emerged small. It's really nice. What if I break it? He was silent for a moment, then placed his mug down. Maya, things exist to be used, not feared. That glass, it's just a glass. If it breaks, we'll get another one. But if you never use it because you're afraid, then what's the point of having it? I gazed at the juice, my throat tight. Go on, he said gently. Drink it. I picked up the glass. It was heavier than I anticipated, solid in my hand. The juice was cold and sweet, and when I placed it back down, carefully, so carefully that it didn't break, Dennis smiled. See, you belong here, Maya, and so does that glass. The initial weeks were unusual. Not unpleasant, just different. Dennis's rules differed from those I was accustomed to. There was no shouting, no door slamming, no tiptoeing around, attempting to decipher someone's mood. His rules were straightforward. Complete your homework. Inform me if something is amiss. If you break something, we will repair it together. The latter rule initially perplexed me. In my previous home, breaking something meant concealing it, lying about it, hoping no one noticed until the anger had subsided. But Dennis was sincere. Several days later, when I inadvertently toppled a potted plant, scattering soil across the hardwood floor, I braced myself for an outburst. Instead, Dennis simply handed me a dustpan. "It happens to me all the time," he said. "I'm terrible with plants." We cleaned it up together. He made no further mention of the incident. It took me some time to grasp his underlying lesson. One evening in late November, while I was at the kitchen table doing homework, Dennis returned from work. He placed his briefcase by the door, loosened his tie, and opened the refrigerator. "Would you like a snack?" he called out. "I'm all right," I replied instinctively. He appeared in the doorway, an apple in one hand. "Maya, if you're hungry, eat. You don't need to ask for permission." But what if I was saving it for something? He walked over and sat beside me. His expression was serious. "Listen to me carefully. Okay, if something is in this house, it belongs to everyone who lives here. That means it belongs to you too. The food, the glasses, the furniture, everything. You don't have to ask. You don't have to wait. This is your home now. Your home." I nodded. Though I wasn't entirely convinced, I yearned to believe it. The first time someone from school referred to Dennis as my father, I didn't correct them. It was mid-December, and there was a parent-teacher conference. I told Dennis he didn't need to attend. I was accustomed to my parents skipping these events or arriving late and disengaged. However, he looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Of course I'm going," he stated. "You're my child now." At the conference, my teacher, Miss Turner, shook Dennis's hand and smiled. "It's so lovely to finally meet Maya's father. She's a wonderful student." Dennis didn't correct her. He simply nodded and said, "Thank you. We're very proud of her." Later that week, he took me for an eye examination, then to the dentist, then for a haircut at a proper salon, not the inexpensive place in a strip mall where Mom used to take me. The stylist inquired about my preference, and I simply stared at my reflection in the mirror, unsure how to respond. "She'd like a trim," Dennis interjected, "and perhaps some layers." "What do you think, Maya?" I realized I had never been asked what I wanted before. "Layers sound good," I whispered. When we left, my hair felt lighter, bouncier. Dennis caught me glancing at my reflection in a shop window and grinned. "Looks good," he said. It was a minor detail, yet it held significance. Christmas arrived quietly. Dennis inquired if I wished to invite anyone over. Friends, classmates. But I hadn't really made any yet, so it was just the two of us. He prepared pancakes for breakfast and allowed me to choose the movie we watched. Sometime in the afternoon, he handed me a small wrapped box. "Go ahead," he said. "Open it." Inside was a journal, a genuine one, bound in soft brown leather with thick cream-colored pages that felt luxurious beneath my fingertips. My name was embossed on the cover in gold lettering, Maya Lawson. "I thought you might appreciate a place to write," Dennis said, "for your thoughts, your stories, whatever you need to express." I traced my name with my fingers, feeling the indentations. "Thank you," I managed. "You're welcome, kid." Later that night, after Dennis had retired, I sat at the desk in my room, and opened the journal. The first page was blank, awaiting inscription. For a long time, I simply stared at it. Then, almost unconsciously, I retrieved my phone. I hadn't accessed social media since leaving my old house. I wasn't sure why I did it now. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps self-inflicted pain, but I typed in my mother's name and scrolled through her recent posts. There they were. My parents, Vanessa, all smiles in front of a palm tree. New beginnings in sunny Florida. Another post depicted the three of them at the beach, at a restaurant, at someone's Christmas party. Not a single picture of me, not one mention that they had left a daughter behind. I closed the app, my hands trembling. Then I opened the journal and picked up a pen. My handwriting appeared small and precise on the expensive paper, but I wrote it nonetheless. December 25th, 2005. I am in this house. I don't know if I belong here yet. I don't know if Uncle Dennis truly wants me, or if he's just doing this because no one else would. But he gave me this journal. He gave me a room. He gave me a glass of orange juice in real glassware and told me I was permitted to use it. So, I'm writing this down because perhaps if I write it enough times, I'll begin to believe it. I am in this house, and maybe someday this house will feel like home. I closed the journal and placed it on the desk next to the lamp Dennis had bought me so I could read at night. Outside, snow began to fall, the first snow of the season, soft and quiet against the window. I didn't realize it then, but those pages in the journal would become my strength, the place I'd turn to when everything unraveled. When the conflicts arose, when I needed to remember who I was and where I came from. But that part of the story unfolded later. For now, I was merely a girl in a house on a quiet street in Queen Anne, learning what it meant to be cared for. Learning what it meant to belong. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope. 6 months. That's how long I had before everything disintegrated once more. 6 months of ordinary mornings, Dennis making coffee while I ate cereal at the kitchen table, engaging in arguments about whether I needed a jacket. I always did. Seattle Springs were deceptive. 6 months of parent-teacher conferences where Miss Turner smiled and remarked that I was truly emerging from my shell. 6 months of quiet evenings when Dennis assisted me with homework, or we watched Jeopardy, competing to see who could answer the fastest. 6 months of feeling secure. Then, on a Saturday morning in May, someone knocked on the door. I was sprawled on the living room floor, working on a book report about The Giver, my journal open beside me for notes. Dennis was in the kitchen, humming something off-key as he prepared lunch. The knock was loud, insistent, 3 sharp raps that made me look up. "I'll get it," Dennis called. I returned to my report, but something about the knock felt amiss, too urgent, too aggressive. Then I heard the voice. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" I froze. That voice. I recognized that voice. I hadn't heard it in 6 months, but I knew it. My mother. I scrambled to my feet as Dennis appeared in the doorway, his face taut. "Maya, stay here." But I couldn't. My legs moved on their own, guiding me to the entryway where Dennis stood, a tense blockade. Beyond him, I saw them. My father, Stephen, looking older and more worn than I remembered. My mother, Rosalie, impeccably dressed in a crisp blouse and slacks, her makeup flawless, her expression frantic. And behind them, Vanessa, 16, now taller, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ground. "Maya," Mom's voice cracked. "Oh my God, Maya, we've been looking everywhere for you." I was speechless, breathless, my gaze fixed on them. "Mr. Lawson?" Dennis's voice was cold and controlled. "Mrs. Lawson, you need to leave." "Leave?" Dad's face flushed red. "You kidnapped our daughter and you're telling us to leave?" The word struck me like a physical blow. Kidnapped. "I didn't kidnap anyone," Dennis said evenly. "Maya has been in my care because you abandoned her. You left her alone in that house for 6 days. "That's a lie," Mom pushed forward, trying to get past Dennis. Maya, sweetie, we went to handle some business in Florida. We tried to call, but the lines were down, and by the time we got back, you were gone. 6 months ago, I heard myself say, my voice sounding strange, distant. You left 6 months ago. Mom's face crumpled. We came back for you. We went to the house, but you weren't there. We called everyone, the school, the police. But no one would tell us where you were. We've been searching, baby. We've been so worried. That's enough. Dennis's voice was still. You're not taking her. If you want to contest custody, you'll do it through the proper legal channels. Now get off my property before I call the police. Call them, Dad said, pulling out his phone. We already have. The police arrived 12 minutes later. I know because I watched the clock on the wall, each second stretching into an eternity, while Dennis kept me behind him, while my parents stood on the porch, while Vanessa finally looked at me with something that might have been guilt. 2 officers, a tall man with graying hair and a younger woman with kind eyes, took statements. They separated us. Dennis in the living room, my parents on the porch, me in the kitchen with the female officer whose name tag read Martinez. Maya, Officer Martinez said gently, sitting across from me at the table. Can you tell me how you ended up here? I told her everything. The note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, Dennis finding me, the way he'd taken care of me, food, school, doctors, everything. I told her about the orange juice glass and the journal and the parent-teacher conferences. I told her about the social media posts from Florida, the pictures of my family smiling at the beach while I'd been eating stale crackers and wondering if anyone was coming back. Officer Martinez wrote it all down, her expression neutral, but her eyes soft. And how do you feel about your uncle? She asked. Do you feel safe with him? Yes. My voice didn't shake. He's the only one who came for me. She nodded slowly. Okay, Maya. Thank you for being honest. When the police left an hour later, they didn't arrest Dennis. They didn't make me go with my parents. They just said the case would be reviewed and that Children's Protective Services would be in touch. My parents left too, but not before my father shouted from the porch, "This isn't over. You can't just steal someone's kid." Dennis closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long moment, his eyes shut. Dennis! My voice was small. He opened his eyes and looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not for himself, for me. It's going to be okay, he said, but I wasn't sure either of us believed it. The letter arrived a week later. It was printed on heavy cream-colored paper with an embossed letterhead, Blackwood and Associates, attorneys at law. Dennis read it at the kitchen table while I sat across from him, my stomach churning. When he finished, he set it down carefully, his jaw tight. What does it say? I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment, then slid the letter across the table. You should read it. My hands shook as I picked it up. Dear Mr. Grayson, we represent Mr. Stephen Lawson and Mrs. Rosalie Lawson in the matter of their daughter, Maya Lawson. Our clients have retained our services to pursue full custody of their minor child, whom you are currently harboring without legal authority. Our clients allege that you removed Maya from their home without consent and have since prevented all contact between Maya and her family. Furthermore, we have reason to believe that your relationship with Maya may be inappropriate in nature. I stopped reading, my vision blurring. Inappropriate. The word felt like poison. They're lying, I said, my voice breaking. They're lying. I know. Dennis reached across the table and took the letter from my hands. I know, Maya, but they're going to make this ugly. They're going to say terrible things, and we're going to have to fight them legally in court. What? I whispered. Why are they doing this? Dennis's expression was grim. Keep reading. I picked up the letter again, forcing myself to focus. inappropriate in nature. We demand the immediate return of Maya to her parents' custody, along with compensation in the amount of $100,000 for emotional distress, legal fees, and damages incurred during this period. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges for kidnapping and custodial interference. Sincerely, Gerald Blackwood, $100,000. They wanted money. They don't want me back, I said numbly. They want to get paid. Dennis's hand clenched into a fist on the table, but his voice stayed calm. We're going to fight this. I've already called a lawyer. A good one. His name is Jonathan Pierce, and he's going to help us. But Maya, he paused, his eyes meeting mine. This is going to be hard. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to try to make you doubt yourself. Doubt me. Are you sure you want to do this? I thought about the 6 days alone, the note on the fridge, the social media posts from Florida, the orange juice glass, the journal with my name on it. Yes, I said. I'm sure. Jonathan Pierce's office was downtown, on the 15th floor of a glass building with a view of Elliott Bay. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with dark-rimmed glasses and a calm, steady presence that reminded me a little of Dennis. He shook my hand like I was an adult. Maya, it's good to meet you. We sat in a conference room with a long, polished table, and Mr. Pierce explained what would happen. Depositions, court hearings, a custody evaluation. My parents would have their lawyer, we would have ours. And in the middle of it all, I would have to tell my story. Maya, Mr. Pierce said, leaning forward, you're going to have to testify. That means sitting in a courtroom, answering questions, and telling the judge what happened. It won't be easy. Mr. Blackwood, your parents' lawyer, is going to try to confuse you, to make you second-guess yourself. He might even try to make you look like you're lying. My throat felt tight. Why would he do that? Because it's his job to defend your parents. And the best way to do that is to discredit you. He paused. But here's the thing. The truth is on our side. All you have to do is tell it exactly as it happened. Can you do that? I looked at Dennis. He nodded just once, his eyes steady. I turned back to Mr. Pierce. Yes, I said. I'll tell the truth. Susan Flores arrived on a Thursday afternoon in early June, carrying a leather folder thick with papers and wearing an expression that gave nothing away. She was maybe 40, with short dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses, dressed in a gray pantsuit that looked professional and slightly rumpled. Mr. Grayson, she said, shaking Dennis's hand. I'm Susan Flores with Child Protective Services. I'm here to conduct a home evaluation. I stood behind him in the entryway, my stomach twisting into knots. 3 months of waiting, of having our lives examined, of hoping someone would see the truth. The home visit took 2 hours. Susan inspected my room, opening the closet, checking the smoke detector, running her hand over the desk. She asked about my bedtime, homework routine, whether I felt safe. Her voice was neutral, clinical, like she was checking boxes on a form. Do you have your own space here? She asked. Yes. I gestured to the desk, the bookshelf, the journal. This is my room. She made a note. Then she interviewed me alone. Dennis waited downstairs while Susan asked the questions I'd been dreading. Why did I want to stay with Dennis? Did I miss my parents? Had Dennis ever hurt me? Made me uncomfortable? Done anything inappropriate? No, I said. Never. He's the only one who came for me. Susan's expression didn't change, but she wrote it down. The investigation didn't stop at our house. Over the next few weeks, Susan visited my school and spoke with Ms. Turner, who brought my file, report cards, attendance records, behavior notes, and explained how I'd been withdrawn and anxious when the school year started, but had flourished since living with Dennis. Susan also talked to our neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, The elderly woman next door, who told her I'd arrived last November looking like a lost little ghost and had transformed into a happy, healthy child. That man's done right by her, Mrs. Garcia said later, patting my hand. I told that CPS lady the truth. But Susan didn't just rely on interviews. She collected evidence. She requested the note my parents had left. "We'll be back soon." She pulled my report cards from the previous year, when my grades had been slipping. She got the phone records showing my parents had never called, never texted, never tried to reach me in those 6 days. She reviewed the medical records, the eye exam, the dentist appointment, the checkup with Dr. Collins. She even found the social media posts, my mother's Facebook, my father's Instagram, showing them smiling in Florida during the months they claimed they'd been searching for me. Not a single photo of me. Not one. 8 weeks after Susan's first visit, Jonathan Pierce called. I was doing summer reading when Dennis answered, his voice calm but tense. "Yes. Uh-huh. And what does it say?" He listened, then glanced at me, and I saw relief shift across his face. "Thank you, Jonathan. We'll see you next week." He hung up and sat down on the couch. Susan submitted her report to the court. She's recommending that I be granted legal guardianship. The words hit all at once, and I felt like I might cry. "She believes us. She believes the evidence," Dennis said gently. "The note, the phone records, the medical care, your progress at school. She wrote that you've thrived under my care and that returning you to your parents would be detrimental to your well-being." Detrimental. It meant harmful. "So I get to stay?" "We still have to go to court," Dennis said. "But this is a good sign, Maya. A really good sign." Nothing was final yet. Nothing was safe. The court date arrived on a gray Monday morning in late August. I woke up early, too anxious to sleep, and put on the navy blue dress Dennis had helped me pick out. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. "You look great," Dennis said from the doorway, wearing a charcoal gray suit. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. "Me too. But we're going to get through this." We drove downtown in silence. The King County Courthouse loomed ahead, tall, imposing, built from stone and glass. Jonathan Pierce met us at the entrance, his expression calm. "Judge Whitman's fair," he said. "He's already read Susan's report, and from what I hear, he's skeptical of your parents' claims. Just tell the truth, Maya." We walked through security and up to the 3rd floor, where the family court waited. The hallway was lined with wooden benches, fluorescent lights humming overhead. That's when I saw them. My parents sat on a bench near the courtroom door, Gerald Blackwood beside them in an expensive suit. My mother's makeup was perfect, her expression sorrowful. My father looked grim, arms crossed, and Vanessa stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the floor. The moment my mother saw me, her face crumbled. "Maya, don't," Dennis said quietly, stepping between us. "Don't talk to her." Mr. Blackwood stood. "Mr. Grayson, I'd advise you to stay away from my niece." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the courtroom doors opened and a bailiff called. "Lost custody case. All parties, please enter." Dennis looked down at me, his hand on my shoulder. "Ready?" I thought about the 6 days alone, the note on the fridge, the social media posts, the orange juice glass, the journal, Susan's report, the truth. I looked back at my parents. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father's jaw was tight, and Vanessa glanced at me just once, guilt written all over her face. "No," I said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." The courtroom smelled like old wood and furniture polish. High ceilings stretched overhead, and tall windows let in gray morning light that made everything look serious and somber. I sat at a polished oak table beside Dennis and Jonathan Pierce, my hands folded in my lap to stop them from shaking. Across the aisle, my parents sat with Gerald Blackwood, their faces carefully composed. Judge Harold Whitman entered, a man in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, and everyone stood. When he sat, we sat. When he spoke, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. This court is now in session. His voice was deep and steady. He looked down at the file in front of him, then up at me. Miss Lawson, I want you to know that I've read every document in this case. I've reviewed the CPS report, the witness statements, and the evidence from both sides. Today, I will hear from everyone involved, and then I will make a decision that is in your best interest. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, I whispered. His expression softened slightly. Good. Because, Miss Lawson, I will hear you. The first to testify were my parents. My mother took the stand first, dabbing her eyes with a tissue as Gerald Blackwood asked her questions in a gentle, sympathetic voice. She explained how they'd gone to Florida for a business opportunity, a chance to start over, to build a better life for the family. She said they'd planned to bring me along once everything was settled, but there had been miscommunications, missed calls, confusion. We tried to reach Maya, she said, her voice breaking, every day, but the phone lines weren't working, and by the time we got back, she was gone. It was a good performance, convincing even. If I hadn't lived through it, I might have believed her. Then Jonathan Pierce stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Lawson, he said calmly, you testified that you tried to call Maya every day. Is that correct? Yes. And yet phone records show that neither you nor your husband called the home number even once during the 6 days Maya was alone. Can you explain that? My mother's face paled. That the lines must have been down. The phone company has no record of any service interruptions during that time. Jonathan pulled out a document and handed it to the judge. In fact, Mrs. Lawson, your phone records show multiple outgoing calls during that period to restaurants, to friends, to a real estate agent in Tampa, just not to your daughter. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Jonathan wasn't finished. You also testified that you returned to Seattle to look for Maya. When was that? We came back as soon as we could. According to your social media posts, you were in Florida for 5 months after leaving Maya. 5 months of photos at the beach, at restaurants, at holiday parties. Not a single post mentioning a missing daughter. Why is that, Mrs. Lawson? Silence. My father's testimony went no better. Jonathan dismantled every lie with calm precision. The phone records, the timeline, the Facebook posts, the lack of any police report filed for a missing child. By the time my father stepped down, his face was red and his jaw was clenched. Then it was our turn. Susan Flores testified first, her voice steady and professional. She explained the home evaluation, the evidence she'd collected, the interviews she'd conducted. In my professional opinion, Maya has thrived under Mr. Grayson's care. She is safe, healthy, and happy. Returning her to her biological parents would not be in her best interest. Mrs. Garcia came next, her voice warm and certain. I've lived next door to Mr. Grayson for 10 years. He's a good man. And that little girl, she was lost when she first arrived. Now she smiles. She plays. She's home. Miss Turner spoke about my transformation at school. The improved grades, the confidence, the friendships I'd started to build. Maya is a different child than she was a year ago. She feels safe now. That matters. And then Dennis took the stand. He didn't cry. He didn't plead. He just told the truth. How he'd found me walking home from the library, how I'd been alone for 6 days, how I'd been afraid and hungry and abandoned. He explained the parent-teacher conferences, the medical appointments, the quiet evenings helping with homework. He talked about the orange juice glass and the journal, and the way I'd slowly started to trust him. I didn't plan to become a father, Dennis said quietly. But Maya needed someone, and I wasn't going to walk away. She deserves better than that. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like they might give out. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat in the wooden chair, my hands gripping the armrests. Judge Whitman looked at me kindly. Maya, I know this is hard. Just take your time and tell me the truth. Can you do that? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Now, in your own words, what happened the day your parents left? I took a breath and told him everything. The note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, the library, the moment Dennis found me, the way he'd given me a home, a room, a place to belong. Gerald Blackwood tried to trip me up during cross-examination, asking if I was sure I remembered correctly, if maybe I'd exaggerated how long I was alone. But I didn't budge. They left me, I said, my voice steady. They did abandon me. That's the truth. But surely, Blackwood said smoothly, you understand that your parents love you? They made mistakes, yes? But doesn't everyone deserve forgiveness? I thought about the orange juice glass, the journal, the parent-teacher conferences, the haircut, the way Dennis had said, you belong here. Love should be shown through actions, I said quietly. Not just words. Judge Whitman took less than 10 minutes to deliberate. When he returned, the courtroom was silent. He looked at my parents, then at Dennis, then at me. I have reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case, he said. The petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, claimed that Mr. Grayson unlawfully took custody of their daughter. However, the evidence clearly shows that the child in question was abandoned for an extended period, during which time Mr. Grayson provided appropriate care and guardianship. He paused, his gaze hardening as he looked at my parents. Furthermore, the petitioner's testimony has been inconsistent and contradicted by phone records, social media posts, and witness statements. It is the finding of this court that Maya Lawson was in fact abandoned by her biological parents, and that Mr. Dennis Grayson has acted in the child's best interest. My heart pounded. Therefore, the petition is denied. Permanent legal guardianship of Maya Lawson is hereby granted to Dennis Grayson, effective immediately. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, my mother was waiting. You stole our daughter! She screamed as we walked past, her face twisted with rage. You turned her against us. This isn't over. Dennis stopped and turned to face her, his expression calm, but his voice like ice. No, Rosalie, he said quietly. You threw her away. I just picked her up. Then he took my hand and we walked to the car. I was legally safe now. The judge had ruled. The papers were signed. Dennis was my guardian, and no one could take that away. But as we drove away from the courthouse, I glanced back and saw my mother standing on the steps, Vanessa beside her, both of them watching us leave. The look on my mother's face wasn't defeat. It was fury. And I knew deep in my bones that this wouldn't be the last time they'd try to destroy what we'd built. The years after the trial were the happiest of my life. That might sound strange. How could anything be happy after courtrooms and accusations and watching my own mother lie under oath? But here's what I learned. When you've had to fight for a home, when you've stood in front of a judge and proven you deserve to be loved, ordinary troubles become luxuries. Pop quizzes felt manageable. Friendship drama felt small. Even the Seattle rain, which everyone complained about, felt like a blessing because I had a warm house to come home to, and someone waiting there who actually cared if I was okay. For 5 years, I got to be a normal kid. Well, as normal as a kid could be when she'd been through what I'd been through. But Dennis made sure those years counted. At 14, I joined the debate club. I didn't think I'd be any good at it. I was still the quiet girl who sat in the back of the classroom, who jumped when teachers called on me, who ate lunch with a book as a shield. But Miss C, Turner, still my teacher, still my champion, suggested I try it. You have a strong voice, Maya, she said. You just need to learn how to use it. So I went. And at first, I was terrible, stumbling over arguments, forgetting my evidence, turning red whenever someone challenged me. But slowly, something shifted. I started to realize that debate wasn't so different from what I'd done in that courtroom. Tell the truth. Back it up with evidence. Don't let anyone intimidate you into backing down. By the end of the year, I'd won my first trophy. Dennis put it on the mantel next to a photo of us at Pike Place Market. Both of us grinning like idiots. That same year, I got my first job bagging groceries at the QFC on 15th Avenue. It wasn't glamorous. $8 an hour, sore feet, and the occasional rude customer. But when I brought home my first paycheck, Dennis sat me down at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. Here's the rule, he said. Save half, spend half every single paycheck. No exceptions. But what if I need? Save half, spend half. He tapped the paper. It's not about the amount, Maya. It's about the habit. You do this now, and by the time you're 30, you'll have options. You won't be trapped. I thought about my parents, about how they'd left for Florida chasing some business opportunity that never materialized, about how they demanded $100,000 from Dennis instead of just coming home. Okay, I said. Save half, spend half. I never broke that rule. At 15, Dennis brought me to his office downtown. Grayson Solutions occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower near the waterfront. And walking into that sleek space, full of computers and whiteboards, and people in business casual, felt like stepping into a different world. Dennis introduced me to his team: engineers, project managers, analysts, and every single one of them shook my hand. As the elevator descended, Dennis remarked, "Did you notice everyone shook your hand?" I nodded. That's because a handshake matters. A firm grip, eye contact, a genuine smile. It signifies you're someone to be taken seriously. He met my gaze. You'll shake many hands in your life, Maya. Make each one count. That night, I practiced in the mirror until my grip felt assured, until my smile seemed natural, not forced. For my 16th birthday, Dennis gifted me a bracelet. It was simple sterling silver, delicate yet strong, with an engraving on the inside I only discovered that evening when I removed it. Don't chase approval, chase peace. The next morning at breakfast, I asked, "Where did you get this?" Dennis looked up from his coffee. I had it made. It's something I learned the hard way. I spent too many years trying to prove myself to your father, to my parents, to people who were never going to be satisfied. Then I realized approval from the wrong people isn't worth having. But peace. Peace is everything. I wore that bracelet daily and still do. At 17, college applications consumed my life. I applied to 8 schools: the University of Washington, Seattle, Western Washington University, and 5 others scattered across the state. Dennis assisted with essays, proofread my personal statement, and helped with scholarship applications until my eyes blurred. "You are going to college," he stated one night when I was ready to abandon the FAFSA. "And you won't drown in debt doing it. So, yes, we are filling out every single one of these forms." We submitted 53 scholarship applications to be exact. I received 17. At 18, I graduated from Garfield High School with honors, a full scholarship to the University of Washington, and a silver pen from Dennis, engraved with my initials on the clip. "For all the stories you're going to write," he said, presenting it in its velvet box. I didn't tell him I'd been journaling since I was 11, ever since the journal he'd given me that first Christmas. I didn't tell him I'd filled 6 of them by then, that writing had become my way of making sense of the world, of processing everything that had happened. But somehow, I believe he knew. On graduation night, we sat on the porch of the house on Queen Anne, the house that had become our house. the place where I'd learned the true meaning of home. The city lights sparkled below, and the air was filled with the scent of summer and possibility. Dennis remained quiet. He didn't need to speak. We simply sat in comfortable silence, observing the city, listening to the distant hum of traffic. Eventually, I found the words I'd held for years. "Dennis," I said softly, "you're the only father I've ever had." His breath hitched. When I turned, his eyes were glistening with unshed tears. He tried to blink them away. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. I reached over and squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. And in that quiet moment, seated on the porch with the city lights below and the summer night enveloping us, a perfect understanding passed between us. No words were necessary, just the two of us and the family we had built from nothing. The University of Washington smelled of opportunity and coffee. That's what I recall most vividly from my first day on campus. Standing in Red Square with my backpack and class schedule, watching students rush by in a blur of hoodies and headphones, I thought, I've made it. The quad was vast. The buildings were imposing. And somewhere in the crowd, a street musician played the violin while a dog, sporting a husky bandana, sat beside his case, collecting tips. This was where I would spend the next 4 years, where I would learn to be a journalist, where I would meet the people who would stand by me when the next battle arrived. I just didn't know it yet. Freshman year hit me like a freight train. It wasn't the coursework. I'd always been a strong student. It was the doubt. Every time I sat in a lecture hall surrounded by students from private schools, whose parents were doctors, lawyers, or professors, who spoke of their gap years in Europe as if it were commonplace, I felt like a fraud. Imposter syndrome, they called it. The feeling that you don't belong, that a mistake was made allowing you in, that any moment now they'll discover you're not actually smart enough to be here. On Sunday mornings, Dennis would call. "How's school?" he'd ask. "Good," I'd lie. "Maya." His voice would shift, becoming gentle yet firm, the same tone he used when I was 12 and hesitant to use the nice glassware. "Talk to me." So I would. I'd tell him about the readings I didn't grasp, the students who seemed far more confident, the professor who corrected my grammar in front of the entire class. And Dennis would listen, then say exactly what I needed to hear. "You earned this. You got a full ride because you are smart, you work hard, and you deserve to be there. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise." By sophomore year, I began to believe him. I met Julia Martinez in Introduction to Journalism during the fall quarter of my sophomore year. She sat 2 rows ahead of me, and I noticed her immediately. Not just because she was the only person in class wearing red lipstick at 9 a.m., but because she was the only one willing to challenge Professor Hendress when he made a sexist remark about female reporters being too emotional for investigative journalism. "With all due respect," Julia said, her hand shooting up, "some of the best investigative journalism in the last decade has been done by women. Jodi Kanner, Megan Tuohy, Ronan Farrow." "Mr. Farrow is hardly my point," Julia continued, unyielding. "The point is that emotion isn't a weakness. It's what makes us care enough to dig deeper when everyone else gives up." I wanted to applaud. After class, I caught up with her outside. "That was incredible," I said. She grinned. "Thanks. I'm Julia." "Maya, I know you're the one who wrote that piece about the food bank volunteer program for the Daily. It was really good." I blinked. "You read that?" "I read everything in the Daily. You should write more." She pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. We're getting coffee." That was Julia. Direct, confident, unapologetic. She became my best friend, my first reader. The person who'd text me at 2 a.m. with story ideas or just to vent about an assignment. She saw the writer in me before I did, and she never let me play small. I met Nathan Cole in the community garden behind McMahon Hall during the spring of my sophomore year. I'd started volunteering there as a way to get out of my dorm room, to do something with my hands that wasn't typing or reading. Nathan was a junior studying environmental science. He had dirt under his fingernails and a smile that made you feel like the world might actually be okay. "You're new," he said, handing me a towel. "Is it that obvious? You're holding the trowel upside down." I laughed, and that was it. We became friends first, working side by side in the garden, talking about classes, books, and the terrible coffee in the hub. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just showed up. By junior year, our friendship had quietly evolved into something more. Our first date was at a diner in Fremont. Nothing fancy, just burgers, milkshakes, and conversation that stretched for 3 hours. He asked about my childhood, and I told him the shortened version. Parents left, uncle took me in, court battle, happy ending. "That must have been terrifying," he said. "It was, but I had Dennis. And now," I gestured around the diner at the life I'd built, "now I have this." Nathan reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad you do." It was the healthiest relationship I'd ever witnessed, let alone been in. No drama, no games, just two people who liked each other, respected each other, and chose to build something together. Dennis approved immediately. Julia grilled him for an hour the first time they met. Afterwards, she texted me, "He's good. Keep him." Junior year, I landed an internship at the Seattle Times. It wasn't glamorous. I fact-checked articles, made coffee runs, and spent hours transcribing interviews. But I was there in the newsroom, watching real journalists at work. And when my editor, a woman named Caroline Morgan, handed me my first real assignment, a human interest piece about a Syrian refugee family settling in Seattle, I worked harder on that story than on anything in my life. When it ran with my byline, I called Dennis from the newsroom, my voice trembling. "It's in print," I said. "My name, my story." "Send me a copy," he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. "I'm framing it." He did. It hung in his office for the next 9 years. I graduated in June 2016 with a degree in journalism and a job offer from the Seattle Times. Dennis sat in the front row at the ceremony, and when they called my name, he was the loudest person in the stadium. I walked across that stage thinking about the girl I'd been at 11, scared, abandoned, convinced I wasn't worth keeping, and the woman I had become. Following the ceremony, we gathered for photographs. I, in my cap and gown, stood beaming beside Dennis, Nathan with his arm around my shoulders, and Julia making a comical face. Mrs. Garcia, who had insisted on attending, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Someone, I believe it was Nathan, captured a shot of all 5 of us together, smiling under the June sun, with the Space Needle visible in the background. That photograph remained on my desk at the Seattle Times for the next 9 years. It still sits there because those people, they became my family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. The one that chose me in return. And when the next challenge arose, when everything I had built was threatened once more, they would be the ones standing beside me. At 24, I had forged a career from scratch. No connections, no family wealth, no favors called in. Just hard work, late nights, and a fierce determination to prove that the girl abandoned at 11 could make something of herself. I had 2 years at the Seattle Times, a growing portfolio of bylines, and a reputation as someone who told important stories about people the world had forgotten. I believed I was safe. I thought the past was behind me. I didn't know that in Phoenix, my sister was watching my every move. The article that changed everything ran in February 2017. I had pitched it to Caroline, my editor, a month prior. It was a feature about middle children, those who got lost in the shuffle between the golden child firstborns and the coddled babies, the ones whose parents forgot their birthdays, skipped their recitals, omitted them from family photos. The ones who learned early that love wasn't guaranteed. "It's personal for you," Caroline stated, not as a question. "Yes," I admitted, "but it's also a good story." She responded, "Then write it." I did. I interviewed psychologists, support group facilitators, and a dozen adults who had grown up feeling invisible within their own families. I wove in research on birth order, parental favoritism, and the long-term effects of emotional neglect. And I wrote it with the kind of empathy that only comes from lived experience. The article ran on a Tuesday morning with the headline, "The Forgotten Ones, the Middle Child Crisis." By noon, it had 5,000 shares. By the end of the week, 50,000. My inbox exploded with messages from readers, people thanking me, sharing their own stories, saying, "Finally, someone understands." Caroline summoned me to her office and uttered the words every journalist dreams of hearing. "This is the kind of work we need more of. How would you feel about a columnist position?" I felt like I was flying. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until much later, was that in Phoenix, Vanessa had just been fired from her job. She had been working as an assistant manager at a boutique hotel. According to what I eventually pieced together from Julia's relentless research, she was let go for attitude problems and unprofessional behavior. No severance, no references, just a box of her belongings and a cold dismissal. She moved back in with our parents. Her days were spent scrolling through job boards, sending out resumes that led nowhere, and watching her old high school friends post photos of their promotions, their engagement rings, their picture-perfect lives. Then, one day in late spring, a mutual acquaintance, someone who had attended Garfield High with both of us, mentioned to our parents that I had written a viral article, that I was doing well, that I had become somebody. Vanessa began Googling my name. She found every article I'd written, every mention of me in the Times, the photo from my UW graduation, my LinkedIn profile, and she started watching. The first message arrived in June. It was a LinkedIn connection request from someone named Sarah Mitchell. No photo, no job history, just a generic profile. I almost ignored it, but the accompanying message gave me pause. "Congrats on the columnist gig. Must be nice." It felt off, tinged with bitterness, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid and declined the request. Then the Instagram comments started. They appeared under my posts, mostly photos of coffee cups and Seattle sunsets, the kind of mundane personal content everyone posts from accounts with random usernames and no profile pictures. The comments were subtle at first. "Some people have all the luck. Easy to succeed when someone else pays your way. I wonder what your real family thinks of all this." I blocked them. New accounts appeared. Julia noticed before I did. "You're getting trolled," she said one afternoon, scrolling through my phone. "These are all from the same person. Look at the syntax, the timing. Someone's obsessed with you." "It's probably just some weirdo," I said, but my stomach churned. "Maybe," Julia conceded, "but be careful, Maya." In October I saw her. I was walking down Pike Street after work, headphones in, lost in thought, when I felt it. That prickle on the back of your neck that tells you someone is watching. I turned, and there she was, standing outside a Starbucks about 30 feet away. Vanessa. She had cut her hair short and dyed it dark. She looked thinner, harder than I remembered, but it was her. And she was staring directly at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, something cold and calculating. Our eyes met. I froze. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked at me for a long, terrible moment, then turned and walked away. I stood there on the sidewalk, my heart pounding, until someone bumped into me and muttered an apology. Then I pulled out my phone and called Dennis. "She's here," I said. Vanessa's in Seattle. Are you sure? I just saw her. Dennis, what if? We'll figure this out, he said calmly. But when I got home, I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't tell Julia. I convinced myself it was a coincidence, that Vanessa was just visiting, that I was overreacting, that everything was fine. I should have known better. 3 weeks later, on a gray Thursday afternoon in late October, I was at my desk at the Times when the receptionist called. Maya, there's someone here to see you. I frowned. I didn't have any appointments scheduled. Who is it? She didn't give a name, but said, she says she's your sister. The world tilted. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, and walked to the elevator. I rode it down to the lobby in silence, my pulse hammering in my ears. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the bright, sterile space with its glass walls and modern furniture. And there she was. Vanessa stood by the reception desk, wearing jeans and a black jacket. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes, triumph, perhaps, or satisfaction. Hi, Maya, she said, her voice smooth and cold. We need to talk. Vanessa stood in the lobby of the Seattle Times, and my coworkers were watching. I could see them out of the corner of my eye. Reporters pausing mid-conversation, interns pretending to check their phones, the receptionist's hand hovering over the phone as if deciding whether to call security. Everyone could sense it. Something was about to happen. Maya, Vanessa said, her voice too loud, too sharp. We need to talk about what you did to our family. Our family, as if it had ever been mine. Vanessa, this isn't the place. You abandoned us. Her voice cracked, and I saw her strategy immediately. Play the victim, create a scene, force me to react. You turned your back on Mom and Dad, on me, and now you're here writing your little articles like you're some kind of hero. My face burned. Every eye in the lobby was on us. You need to leave, I said quietly. I need to leave? She laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. You stole from us. Uncle Dennis stole you, brainwashed you, and now you act like we're the bad guys. Do these people know the truth about you, Maya? Do they know you're a liar? The receptionist picked up the phone. Ma'am, a security guard said, approaching cautiously. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm her sister, Vanessa shrieked. I have a right to… No, you don't. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You have no right to be here. You need to go. The guard took Vanessa's arm and she jerked away, still shouting as he escorted her toward the door. This isn't over, Maya. You can't just erase your family. You can't just… The door closed behind her, cutting off her voice. The lobby was silent. I stood there, my hands shaking, my face hot with humiliation, and felt every single person staring at me. Then I turned and walked to the elevator, pressing the button with trembling fingers. Behind me, someone whispered. I didn't catch the words, but I heard the tone. Gossip. The days that followed were a nightmare. Vanessa had always been adept at social media, better than me, better than most people. And now she weaponized it. The fake accounts multiplied. New usernames, no profile pictures, all posting the same kinds of comments on every article I wrote. Maya Lawson is a fraud. She abandoned her family and now profits off their pain. The Seattle Times should be ashamed to employ someone like this. They didn't just comment on my articles, they tagged the Seattle Times official accounts, my editor, the paper's advertisers. Then Vanessa posted from her personal Facebook, an account I'd blocked years ago, but screenshots spread like wildfire. My sister Maya walked away from our family when we needed her most. Now she writes articles about forgotten children while pretending she was the victim. Here's the truth. Below the text were photos I hadn't seen in years. Me at 10, smiling next to Vanessa at a birthday party. Me at 12, standing between my parents at some family event I didn't even remember. Photos carefully curated to tell a story that wasn't true. The post was shared 200 times in the first hour. Then the professional attack started. Someone, Vanessa or someone she'd recruited, began leaving comments on every article I'd written, picking apart my research, questioning my sources, insinuating that I was biased, unreliable, dishonest. My work phone rang constantly, my personal Instagram filled with messages from strangers calling me ungrateful, a liar, and worse. Julia helped me block accounts as fast as they appeared, but more kept coming. "She's trying to destroy your credibility," Julia said one night, scrolling through the comments on her phone. "If she can make people doubt you as a journalist, she wins." I know. So, what are you going to do? I didn't have an answer yet. 2 weeks after the lobby incident, my editor-in-chief called me into her office. Caroline Morgan was a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. I'd always respected her, but as I sat across from her desk, I felt like I was 12 years old again, waiting to hear if I was in trouble. "Maya," she said, folding her hands, "we need to talk about what's been happening." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, I know it's been—" "Stop," she held up a hand. "I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm here to tell you that I've seen the social media attacks. I've read the comments. And I've also read the court records from your custody case." I blinked. "You looked me up?" "Of course I did. When someone starts a smear campaign against one of my reporters, I do my homework." She leaned back in her chair. "Your sister is lying, Maya. And I want you to know that this paper stands behind you." Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. But Caroline continued, "I also want to know how you want to handle this. We can ignore it and wait for it to die down. We can issue a statement or—" She paused. "You can write about it." I looked up. "Write about it? You're a journalist. This is your story. And if you want to tell it on your terms, with the facts, I'll publish it." For a moment I couldn't speak. Then I nodded. "I want to write it." "Good," Caroline said. "Then get to work." That night, I sat down at my laptop with a cup of coffee and Dennis's words echoing in my head. "The truth is on our side. All you have to do is tell it." I opened a new document and typed the title, "When Family Becomes Strangers, A Journalist's Story." Then I started writing. I wrote about the note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, Dennis finding me, the courtroom battle, the years of peace, and now the attacks, the lies, the fake accounts, the invasion of my professional life. I wrote it with the same precision I used for every article, clear, factual, backed by evidence. No melodrama, no self-pity, just the truth. By midnight, I had a first draft. By 2 hours in the morning, I had a second. I was ready to publish. But before I could send it to Caroline, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Call me. It's urgent." My stomach sank because I knew, deep in my bones, that Vanessa had made one more move. And this time, she'd gone after the person I loved. When narcissists don't get the reaction they want, they escalate. They find new targets, new pressure points, new ways to inflict pain. For me, the target was Nathan. I called him back immediately, my hands shaking as I pressed his name on my phone. "What happened?" I said the moment he picked up. "My mom just called." Nathan's voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. "Someone contacted her and my dad. A woman claiming to be your sister. She told them—" He paused. "She told them I should be careful, that you're manipulative, that you've alienated your entire family and I'm next." My stomach dropped. "Nathan, I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. This isn't your fault." He took a breath. I explained everything to them. The abandonment, the custody battle, the court records. They believe me, Maya. They believe you. Relief hit me, but it was short-lived because I knew this was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, the attacks on Nathan intensified. Vanessa or someone working for her started leaving comments on his LinkedIn profile. Professional sounding at first, then increasingly pointed. Interesting career trajectory. Does your employer know about your girlfriend's family drama? Hope the relationship is worth the baggage. His coworkers started getting connection requests from fake profiles, followed by messages implying that Nathan was involved in some kind of scandal. One of them even forwarded him a screenshot. Did you know Nathan Cole's girlfriend abandoned her family? Nathan handled it with more grace than I would have. He responded to his coworkers with the truth, blocked the fake accounts, and refused to engage with the harassment. But I could see the toll it was taking. The tension in his jaw, the way he checked his phone constantly, the exhaustion in his eyes. Then came the Facebook posts. Vanessa created a new public post this time with photos she must have pulled from my old Instagram. Pictures of Nathan and me at a farmer's market, at a Huskies game, at Julia's birthday party. She captioned it, "My sister's boyfriend doesn't know what he's gotten into. Prayers for him." It was shared 40 times in an hour. "She's trying to destroy us," I said that night, sitting on Nathan's couch with my head in my hands. "She's going after you because she knows it'll hurt me." Nathan sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "She's not going to win, Maya. We're not going to let her." "But what if—" "No." His voice was firm. "We're going to fight this together." 3 days later, the legal threat arrived. It came via certified mail addressed to both Dennis and me, a letter from Gerald Blackwood Esquire on behalf of Vanessa Lawson. The letter was 2 pages of legal jargon, but the core demand was simple. Vanessa was claiming that over the years she and our parents had given me gifts. Birthday presents, Christmas presents, money that I'd obtained through manipulation and deceit. She was now demanding $75,000 in restitution, plus legal fees. I stared at the letter in disbelief. "This is insane," I sputtered. "I haven't spoken to them in 10 years. They didn't give me anything." Dennis read the letter twice, his expression hardening. "This is harassment, pure and simple." He picked up his phone. "I'm calling Jonathan." Jonathan Pierce met with us the next morning at a cafe downtown. He read the letter, made a few notes, then set it aside with the kind of calm that comes from years of dealing with nonsense. "This won't hold up in court," he said. "There's no documentation, no proof of any gifts, and frankly, it's absurd on its face. But we're not going to wait for them to file a lawsuit. We're going to shut this down now." "How?" I asked. "Cease and desist, and a restraining order." Jonathan drafted a response that was a masterpiece of legal steel, 3 pages, detailing every false claim, every act of harassment, every boundary Vanessa had crossed. He cited the workplace incident, the fake social media accounts, the stalking, the attacks on Nathan. He ended with a demand that Vanessa and her attorney cease all contact immediately or face legal consequences. Then, we filed for a restraining order. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from the Seattle Times lobby, screenshots of the fake accounts, records of messages sent to Nathan's coworkers, copies of the Facebook posts. Jonathan compiled it all into a thick folder and submitted it to the court. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. King County Courthouse, December 14th, 2017. This time, I wasn't 12 years old. This time, I wasn't scared. Vanessa sat on the other side of the courtroom with Gerald Blackwood. Her expression was carefully neutral, but when our eyes met, I saw a flicker of something. Panic, maybe. Or the realization that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. The judge, a different one this time, a woman in her 50s named Judge Patricia Lynn, reviewed the evidence in silence. Then she looked up at Vanessa. "Miss Lawson, The evidence presented here is extensive and troubling. The petitioner has documented a clear pattern of harassment, both in person and online, directed at herself and her partner. Do you dispute any of these claims? Vanessa glanced at Blackwood, who leaned over and whispered something. Then she said, "Your Honor, I was simply trying to reconnect with my sister. Our family has been—" Ms. Lawson. Judge Lynn's voice was sharp. Showing up at someone's workplace unannounced, creating fake social media accounts, and contacting their partner's family does not constitute reconnecting. It constitutes harassment. Vanessa's face flushed. Judge Lynn turned to me. Ms. Maya Lawson, based on the evidence presented, I am granting a temporary restraining order. Ms. Vanessa Lawson is prohibited from contacting you, appearing at your home or workplace, or contacting anyone on your behalf. This order will remain in effect pending a full hearing in 30 days. The gavel came down. I exhaled for the first time in 2 weeks. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan shook my hand. We'll make this permanent at the next hearing. In the meantime, document everything. If she violates this order, call the police immediately. Thank you, I said, for everything. He smiled. Go finish that article, Maya. It's time to tell your story. I went home and opened my laptop. The draft of When Family Becomes Strangers was still there, waiting. I'd written most of it before Nathan's urgent text, but now I had more to add. The attacks on him, the legal threats, the restraining order. I wrote it all with the precision of a journalist and the fury of someone who'd had enough. By midnight, it was done. I sent it to Caroline with a note. Ready when you are. Her response came 10 minutes later. This is incredible, Maya. Powerful, honest, and airtight. We'll publish this week. Are you ready for what comes next? I stared at the message for a long moment, my cursor blinking in the reply box. Then I typed, I have to be, and hit send. The article published on a Thursday morning in mid-December. By noon, it had 50,000 reads. By evening, it was wildfire. When Family Becomes Strangers, a journalist's story, ran on the Seattle Times website with a simple header photo. Me at my desk, looking directly at the camera. No smile, just the quiet determination of someone who decided to stop hiding. The article was long, nearly 4,000 words, but people read every sentence. They read about the note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, Dennis finding me, the courtroom battle at 12, the years of peace, and then the return. Vanessa's harassment, the workplace ambush, the attacks on Nathan, the legal threats. I wrote it the way I'd write any investigative piece, with facts, with evidence, with clarity. But I also wrote it with something I'd never put into my journalism before. My own voice. Raw, honest, unflinching. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By the end of the first day, the article had been shared 20,000 times. My inbox filled with messages, hundreds of them, then thousands. Readers sending me their own stories. This is my story. I've never seen it written down before. Thank you for making me feel seen. I thought I was the only one. My parents did the same thing. I always thought it was my fault. You gave me permission to stop apologizing for protecting myself. Some were from middle children who'd grown up invisible. Some were from people who'd been abandoned by their families and told they were the problem. Some were from adults still trying to heal from childhood spent feeling unwanted. Every single one of them said the same thing, in different words. Thank you for telling the truth. Julia called me that night, her voice thick with emotion. Maya, do you know what you just did? You didn't just tell your story. You told their stories. All of them. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen, watching the share count climb. Nathan sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said quietly. You fought back with the truth, and you won. Behind the scenes, the fallout was swift and brutal for them. Vanessa couldn't respond. The restraining order prohibited her from contacting me or anyone associated with me, and her lawyer had made it clear that any public retaliation would be used against her in court. She stayed silent, but according to Julia's digging, her Facebook and Instagram accounts went private within hours of the article going live. My parents, Stephen and Rosalie, tried to issue a statement on their own Facebook pages, something vague about misunderstandings and one-sided stories. But it backfired spectacularly. People in their Phoenix community recognized the details. Friends and neighbors commented, asking pointed questions. Within 2 days, both posts were deleted. Gerald Blackwood, the lawyer who'd been so eager to threaten me with lawsuits, quietly withdrew from representing them. No explanation, no statement. He just disappeared from the case. The $75,000 demand evaporated with him. 2 weeks later, at the follow-up hearing for the restraining order, the judge reviewed the evidence, including the article, the public response, and the documented harassment, and made the order permanent. 3 years, Vanessa was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, Nathan, Dennis, or my workplace. Jonathan Pierce shook my hand outside the courthouse. "That's it, Maya. You're legally protected now. They can't touch you." I wanted to believe him. The article didn't just end the attacks. It launched my career. In January, Caroline called me into her office and offered me a promotion. Senior staff writer with my own column and editorial freedom to pursue the stories I wanted to tell. "You've earned this," she said, "not just because of the viral piece, but because you're a damn good journalist. I want you to keep doing what you do, telling the stories no one else is telling." I accepted. A week later, I got an email from NPR asking if I'd be willing to do an interview about the article and the broader issue of family estrangement. I said yes. And on a cold January morning, I sat in a radio studio and talked to a host named Lulu Garcia Navarro about what it means to walk away from a toxic family and why society makes it so hard. The interview aired on Weekend Edition, and afterward, the speaking invitations started coming in. Universities, conferences, support groups for estranged adults. People wanted to hear my story. They wanted to know how I'd survived, how I'd healed, how I'd built a life. I said yes to as many as I could. The moment that mattered most, though, didn't happen on NPR or at a conference. It happened 3 months later, on a rainy March afternoon in a coffee shop near the Times office. I was working on my laptop, headphones in, when someone tapped my shoulder. I looked up to see a woman in her 30s holding a to-go cup and looking nervous. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but you're Maya Lawson, right? You wrote, 'When Family Becomes Strangers'?" "Yes," I said, pulling out my earbuds. She smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "I just wanted to say thank you. I read your article in December, and it gave me permission to stop trying with my parents. I've spent my whole life thinking I was the problem, that if I just tried harder, they'd love me. But your article helped me see that sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do for yourself." I stood up and, without thinking, hugged her. She hugged me back, both of us crying in the middle of a crowded Starbucks while baristas called out drink orders around us. "You're not the problem," I told her. "You never were." "Neither were you," she said. When she left, I sat back down and stared at my laptop screen, unable to focus on work, because that was why I'd written the article. Not for revenge, not for vindication, but for the people who needed to hear that they weren't alone, that they weren't broken, that choosing peace over approval was okay. I thought that was the end. For 6 years, it was 6 years of peace. 6 years of building my career, writing my columns, speaking at events. 6 years of Sunday dinners with Dennis, date nights with Nathan, coffee shop hangs with Julia. 6 years of normalcy, the kind I'd fought so hard for, the kind I'd never taken for granted. Dennis turned 60, then 65. He talked about retiring, about selling grace and solutions, about maybe traveling more. We laughed about him becoming one of those retirees who took up woodworking or learned to sail. Nathan and I moved in together into a small apartment in Fremont with a view of the ship canal. We adopted a cat. We talked vaguely about the future, marriage, maybe someday, when we were ready. Life was good. Life was stable. Life was mine. I thought the battles were over. I thought I'd won. But in early 2023, Dennis got sick. And the moment my old family heard, they smelled blood again. 6 years after that article felt like a gift. Dennis turned 60, then 65. I turned 25, then 29. We celebrated birthdays and holidays, marked milestones, built routines. Sunday dinners became sacred, just the two of us. Or sometimes Nathan and Julia, too, gathered around the kitchen table in the house on Queen Anne, arguing about politics or laughing at Dennis's terrible dad jokes. We thought we had forever, or at least we thought we had more time than we did. In 2018, I won the Pacific Northwest Journalists Association Award for feature writing. The viral article about family estrangement had opened doors I hadn't known existed, and suddenly, I was being invited to speak at conferences, to contribute to anthologies, to consult on stories about trauma and recovery. By the end of the year, The Stranger, Seattle's alternative weekly, offered me a position as a staff columnist. The pay was better. The creative freedom was total. And I'd get to write the kinds of deep-dive personal essays that had always been my strength. I took it. Dennis threw me a celebration dinner at a restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. He raised his glass and said, "To Maya, who proved that the best revenge is living well." Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. Julia wiped her eyes and pretended she wasn't crying. I felt invincible. In 2019, Nathan and I moved in together. The apartment in Fremont wasn't much. A one-bedroom with a galley kitchen and a view of the ship canal, but it was ours. We painted the walls a soft gray, hung photos from our travels, and adopted a tabby cat we named Atticus because we were both literary nerds. Life was stable. Life was good. Life was everything I'd fought for. Dennis came over for dinner once a week, always bringing wine and always pretending he didn't sneak treats to the cat when we weren't looking. He seemed happy, healthy, strong. I didn't see the cracks yet. Then came 2020 and the world shut down. The pandemic hit Seattle hard and fast. Offices closed, restaurants shuttered, the streets emptied. Nathan and I hunkered down in our apartment, working from home, ordering groceries online, watching the news with growing dread. Dennis lived alone. He'd always been independent, always insisted he didn't need help, but I wasn't going to let him isolate through a pandemic at 63. So, we formed a pod. Me, Nathan, Dennis. And every Sunday we still gathered for dinner, masked when necessary, distanced when required, but together. Those dinners became a lifeline, not just for him, but for me. "You know what I'm grateful for?" Dennis said one night in July when Seattle's brief summer had finally arrived and we were eating on his back patio. "This, you, the fact that we get to do this." "It's just dinner, Dennis," I said, smiling. "No, Maya, it's not." He looked at me, his expression serious. "It's family." In December 2021, Nathan proposed. We were walking through the Washington Park Arboretum, the trees bare and the ground covered in frost, when he stopped on a bridge overlooking a pond and got down on one knee. "Maya Lawson," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You're the strongest, kindest, most incredible person I've ever met. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married in the spring of 2022. A small ceremony at a garden venue in Ballard with 30 people and a violinist, and vows we wrote ourselves. Julia was my maid of honor. Dennis walked me down the aisle. I'll never forget that moment. Dennis, in his best suit, offering me his arm, his eyes bright with pride and something that looked suspiciously like tears. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "I'm ready." As we walked, I thought about the girl I'd been at 11, abandoned, alone, convinced she wasn't worth keeping. And I thought about the woman I'd become, walking toward a man who loved me, surrounded by people who'd chosen to be there, with a father who'd stayed. At the end of the aisle, Dennis hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you, kid," he whispered. "I love you," I whispered back. He let go, and I took Nathan's hand, and we said our vows under a sky so blue it hurt. Later that summer, Dennis started talking about retirement. "I'm thinking next year," he said over Sunday dinner in August. 66 feels like a good time to step back. Maybe travel. Maybe finally learn how to fish. "You hate fishing," I pointed out. "Then maybe I'll learn to like it," he grinned. "Point is, I've worked long enough. Time to enjoy life." What I didn't know, what he didn't tell me, was that he'd also updated his will that month. Made sure everything was airtight, made sure I'd be protected. He was preparing, even then. In early 2023, I started to notice the changes. Dennis moved slower, got tired more easily, skipped our Sunday dinners twice in January, something he'd never done before. When I asked if he was okay, he waved it off. "Just getting old, Maya. It happens." But he was losing weight. His face looked thinner, his clothes looser. And one Sunday in March, when he stood up from the dinner table, he winced and pressed a hand to his side. "Dennis, I'm fine. Just a little indigestion." "You should see a doctor." "I will. Stop worrying." But he didn't. Not until I showed up at his house unannounced in April and told him I wasn't leaving until he made an appointment. He went the next week. The diagnosis came in May. I sat beside Dennis in Dr. Collins's office, the same Dr. Collins who'd given me checkups when I was 12, who documented that I was slightly underweight but otherwise healthy during the custody evaluation. He was older now, grayer, but his expression was the same, kind, but unflinching. "Dennis," Dr. Collins said gently, "the scans show a mass on your pancreas. The biopsy confirms it's cancer. Stage 3, possibly stage 4. It's advanced." The word cancer felt like a punch to the chest. "What's the prognosis?" Dennis asked, his voice steady. Dr. Collins hesitated. "With aggressive treatment, chemotherapy, possibly surgery, we might be able to extend your time. 18 to 24 months, maybe." "Maybe." The word hung in the air like a guillotine. "And without treatment?" Dennis asked. 6 months, maybe less." I couldn't breathe. The room was too small, the air too thin. I heard myself say something. There has to be something else, another option. But Dr. Collins was shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Maya. I wish I had better news." We sat in the parking lot afterward, Dennis in the passenger seat of my car. Me gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "Dennis," I said, my voice breaking, "we're going to fight this. We'll do the treatment." "Maya." He put his hand over mine. "I'm 66 years old. I've had a good life. A great life." "You're not dying," I said fiercely. "You're not." He smiled, sad and gentle. "Everyone does, kid. It's just a matter of when." "Stop." Tears blurred my vision. "Stop talking like that." His voice was firm now, the same tone he'd used when I was 12 and needed to hear the truth. "I got to watch you build a meaningful life. I got to see you graduate, get married, become the person you were always meant to be. That's more than most people get, Maya. That's everything." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was lean my head against his shoulder and cry while the Seattle rain drummed softly against the windshield. Watching someone you love die slowly is a particular kind of hell. It's not the big moments, the diagnosis, the hospital visits, the conversations about hospice. It's the small ones, the way their clothes start to hang loose, the way they wince when they stand, the way their laughter gets quieter until it stops altogether. And through it all, every time my phone rang from an unknown number, I knew the vultures were circling. Dennis started chemotherapy in late June. I moved back into the house on Queen Anne to take care of him, not because he asked, but because I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Nathan came over every evening after work, bringing dinner and helping with whatever needed doing. Julia stopped by on weekends with groceries and terrible reality TV to distract us. The chemo made Dennis tired and nauseous. He lost more weight. His hair, already gray, started to thin, then fall out in patches. But he never complained. Not once. "How are you feeling?" I'd ask every morning. "Like $1,000,000. He'd lie, and we'd both pretend to believe it. The first contact came in mid-July. I was loading the dishwasher when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown Phoenix number. Against my better judgment, I listened. "Maya, honey, it's Mom." Rosalie's voice was soft, tentative, dripping with false concern. "I heard Dennis is sick. I'm so sorry. If there's anything we can do, please let us know. We're praying for both of you." I deleted it immediately and blocked the number. 3 days later, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Maya, it's Vanessa. Can we talk? I know things have been hard between us, but I want to make amends. Life is short. Please." I showed it to Dennis. He read it, then handed my phone back. "Don't respond," he said quietly. "But Maya, silence is heavier than words. They want a reaction. Don't give them one." I blocked that number too. In August, Dennis was hospitalized with complications from the chemo, dehydration, an infection, his body struggling to fight back. We spent 5 days in a sterile room at Swedish Medical Center, and it was there, late one night when the nurses had dimmed the lights and the machines beeped softly in the background, that Dennis brought up the will. "I've updated everything," he said, his voice weak. "Jonathan has copies. You're the executor, and you inherit everything. The house, the business, proceeds, all of it. It's airtight, Maya. They can't touch it." "I don't want to talk about this," I said, my throat tight. "But you have to." He reached for my hand. "Because they're going to try. When I'm gone, they're going to come after you. And I need you to promise me you'll fight." I looked at him, pale, thin, but still him. Still the man who'd found me walking home from the library at 11 years old and decided I was worth saving. "I promise," I whispered. A week after Dennis came home from the hospital, an email arrived in my inbox from Stephen Lawson. Subject: a request. "Maya, we understand that Dennis is very ill. We would like to visit and say goodbye. Whatever differences we've had, he was family once, and we believe he deserves to be surrounded by love in his final days. Please let us know when would be convenient. Stephen." I read it 3 times, fury building with each word. He was family once. As if they had any right to claim him. As if they'd ever cared about him or me at all. I wrote back, "Dennis doesn't want to see you. Do not contact us again." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. September brought a brief, cruel reprieve. The chemo seemed to work for a few weeks. Dennis had more energy, ate a little more, even joked about going back to work. For a moment, I let myself hope. Then the legal threat arrived. Gerald Blackwood, the same lawyer who'd represented my parents in the custody battle 17 years ago, who demanded $75,000 after the workplace attack, who apparently had no shame, sent a letter to both Dennis and me. In it, he claimed that my parents were concerned about Dennis's medical care and the decisions being made on his behalf. He suggested that I might be unduly influencing a vulnerable, terminally ill man. He threatened to petition the court to appoint a neutral medical guardian. I called Jonathan Pierce immediately. "They're trying to challenge his competency," Jonathan said, reading the letter over the phone. "They want to claim he's not capable of making his own decisions so they can step in." "That's insane. Dennis is completely lucid." "I know, which is why we're going to shut this down fast." Jonathan paused. "We'll get a medical evaluation from Dr. Collins. He'll confirm that Dennis has full mental capacity." The evaluation happened 2 days later. Dr. Collins asked Dennis questions: his name, the date, who was president, what medications he was taking. Dennis answered everything clearly, calmly, even managing a dry joke about how he wished he didn't remember the current political situation. Dr. Collins signed a document certifying that Dennis Grayson was of sound mind and fully capable of making his own medical and legal decisions. Jonathan sent it to Blackwood with a note that basically said, "Try again, and we'll file harassment charges." We didn't hear from him after that. By October, the brief improvement was over. Dennis's energy faded again. He slept more, ate less, struggled to walk from the bedroom to the living room without needing to rest. Dr. Collins gently suggested we start thinking about hospice care, not giving up, but acknowledging that the goal was now comfort, not cure. I hated that word, hospice. It felt like surrender, but Dennis was calm about it. "I'm tired, Maya," he said one afternoon in November, sitting in his favorite chair by the window, a blanket over his lap. "I fought as hard as I can, but I'm ready." "I'm not," I said, my voice breaking. He smiled, sad and gentle. "I know, kid, but you will be." The final contact came in mid-December. I was sitting at Dennis's bedside, reading aloud from one of his favorite books, To Kill a Mockingbird, the same one he'd given me years ago, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Phoenix area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then, against my better judgment, I listened. Stephen's voice, clipped and businesslike. "Maya, this is your father. We've decided to come to Seattle. We'll be there in 2 days. We're already booked on a flight. We'll be staying at the Marriott downtown. We expect to see Dennis and you. Not a request, an announcement." I played it for Dennis. His expression hardened. "Don't let them in," he said, his voice weak but firm. "Promise me, Maya, don't let them near me." "I won't," I said. "I promise." Christmas Eve arrived cold and gray, the kind of Seattle winter day that makes you want to stay inside with tea and blankets. Dennis was asleep in his hospital bed. We'd set it up in the living room so he could see the Christmas tree I decorated, the lights twinkling softly in the dim room. His breathing was shallow but steady, peaceful. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. Text from Rosalie Lawson. "We'll be there tomorrow morning. 10 quarts. See you soon." I stared at the message, rage burning hot and bright in my chest. They were coming. After 17 years of silence, after abandoning me, after attacking me, after trying to destroy everything Dennis and I had built, they were coming to circle his deathbed like the vultures they were. I looked at Dennis, asleep and vulnerable, the man who'd given me everything. And I made a decision. They wouldn't be allowed near him. Not tomorrow, not ever. I'd promised to fight, and I was done being polite. Christmas morning, the knock came at exactly 10 hours. Through the peephole, I saw them, Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa, standing on the porch with rolling suitcases. Vanessa already had her phone raised, recording. They weren't visiting. They were documenting, planning to stay. I opened the door just enough for them to see me. Nathan stood behind me like a wall. "No," I said. My mother's face collapsed into practiced sorrow. "Maya, please. We just want to see him, to say goodbye. Dennis doesn't want to see you. Leave." "We have a right," my father began. "You have no rights here," Nathan said calmly. "You're violating a restraining order by being on this property. Leave now, or we call the police." Vanessa lifted her phone higher. "You're isolating a dying man." I slammed the door and locked it. They stayed for 2 hours. They sat on the porch. I watched through the window, my mother crying for the camera, my father pacing on his phone, Vanessa filming the house and narrating a story about being cruelly blocked from saying goodbye. I called 911. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Martinez stepped out. Same officer who'd taken my statement 17 years ago. She recognized me instantly. "Maya," she said softly. "What's happening?" I showed her everything: the restraining order, messages, emails, court papers. She walked to the porch and spoke to them. My father argued. Vanessa kept filming. Officer Martinez handed them copies of the order and said something sharp. My father's face went red. They finally left, suitcases rattling down the driveway. Vanessa filmed until the last second. My mother cried. Real or fake? I couldn't tell anymore. "They won't bother you again tonight," Officer Martinez said. "Document everything. Call if they return." She squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry about Dennis." The week after Christmas, Dennis barely woke. Hospice came daily, speaking in gentle voices, adjusting medication, telling me it would be soon. Days, maybe? I sat beside him, holding his hand, reading books he loved, playing music he used to hum. Nathan brought food I couldn't eat. Julia sat with me in silence. Mrs. Garcia brought soup and quiet comfort. On January 10th, Dennis opened his eyes. It was late afternoon, winter light pale through the window. I'd been dozing when I felt his fingers twitch. "Maya," he whispered. "I'm here." His eyes focused clear for the first time in days. "Don't let them erase you." "What?" He swallowed. "Your presence. Your story. They'll try when I'm gone." "I won't," I promised, crying. "I won't." He squeezed my hand weakly, then his eyes closed. Those were the last words he ever said. Dennis Grayson died at 3:47 a.m. on January 15th, 2025. I was holding his hand. Nathan was beside me. One moment, Dennis was breathing slow, shallow. The next, he stopped. The world stopped with him. I don't know how long I sat there waiting for him to breathe again. Nathan held me. The nurse spoke softly, but I didn't hear. My father was gone. The man who found me, saved me, raised me, gone. I was 30 years old and felt like an 11-year-old girl, alone in an empty house. By sunrise, my old family knew. 14 missed calls, voicemails, texts, an email demanding involvement. I blocked them all and called Jonathan Pierce. "Dennis left specific instructions," Jonathan said later. "The funeral is private. Invitation only. Your biological family is excluded. They'll come anyway. Then we'll have security." Dennis prepared for this. The funeral was held January 20th at a small chapel. Burial afterward. 50 people came. Friends, neighbors, colleagues. Julia gave a eulogy that broke everyone. Nathan read from To Kill a Mockingbird. Mrs. Garcia brought white roses. I sat in the front row, breathing. Halfway through, the doors burst open. My parents and Vanessa stormed in. My mother wailed. Vanessa screamed, pointing at me, accusing, blaming. Security grabbed them. Vanessa fought, shrieking. My father shouted about lawyers. My mother sobbed theatrically. They were dragged out. The doors slammed. I stared ahead, refusing to cry. "You're okay," Julia whispered. "They're gone." At the graveside, after everyone left, I stood alone. I placed a single white rose on the casket. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered. Not uncle, not guardian. Dad. Nathan, Julia, and Mrs. Garcia stood nearby, not intruding, just witnessing. That night, alone in the house that was now mine, I opened Dennis's safe. Inside were deeds, documents, and a sealed envelope with my name. I opened it. Maya, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're about to face them one last time. My question for you: if you walked into that conference room, would you stay silent or speak your truth? Tell me what you do. Philip Warren's conference room was all glass and polished wood, with a view of Elliott Bay that would have been beautiful if I'd been able to focus on anything except the three people sitting across the table from me: Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa Lawson. They thought they were about to claim a fortune. They were about to learn otherwise. Philip Warren, Dennis's estate lawyer, a dignified man in his 60s, sat at the head of the table with a leather folder. Jonathan Pierce sat beside me, calm and alert. Nathan held my hand under the table. Across from us, Gerald Blackwood sat beside my parents, looking confident. Vanessa kept glancing at me with something between hatred and triumph. Philip cleared his throat. Today we are gathered for the reading of the last will and testament of Dennis Michael Grayson, executed August 15, 2024. Mr. Grayson's estate is valued at approximately $7 million. He opened the folder and looked through the list of specific donations. To Helen Garcia, a neighbor and friend, $50,000. I smiled, thinking of Ms. Garcia. To the hospice nurses at Swedish Medical Center, $10,000 each. To the Seattle Orphan Scholarship Fund, $100,000. It took my breath away. Even in death, Dennis cared for people who were forgotten. Then Philip's tone changed. The remaining estate is distributed as follows. Mr. Grayson's shares in Grayson Solutions, valued at $4.5 million, are to be divided equally among employees who have been with the company for 5 years or more. The house at 1247 Belmont Avenue East, valued at $2.3 million, is willed to Maya Lawson. My mother's face twitched. All investment accounts and remaining assets totaling $1.9 million is willed to Maya Lawson. Vanessa's hands clenched into fists. Philip froze, then looked directly at my parents. To Stephen Lawson, Rosalie Lawson, and Vanessa Lawson, I leave nothing. Silence. Absolute silence. My father's face turned red. Vanessa stood up so quickly that her chairs scraped the floor. This is ridiculous. Please sit, Ms. Lawson, Philip said calmly. I do not. Finished. Philip adjusted his glasses and read Dennis's statement. I, Dennis Michael Grayson, being of sound mind, wish to state my reasons clearly. In November 2005, Stephen and Rosalie abandoned their 11-year-old daughter Maya for 6 days, depriving her of food and contact. When I took her back, they didn't object or call. They simply left. In 2006, they filed a lawsuit accusing me of kidnapping and asking for $100,000. They lost. The court awarded me full custody. In 2017, Vanessa began a campaign of harassment against Maya, including workplace attacks and threatening messages. A restraining order was granted. In 2023, during my terminal illness, all three violated restraining orders, harassed hospice staff, and crashed my funeral. Maya Lawson is my daughter in every way that matters. Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa abandoned her and have spent 20 years trying to harm her. They deserve nothing, and they will receive nothing. The room was silent except for my mother's quiet breathing. Then, Philip opened a laptop. Mr. Grayson recorded a video statement in December 2024 to confirm his mental competency. He pressed play. Dennis appeared on screen, thin, tired, but clear-eyed. December 10, 2024. My name is Dennis Michael Grayson. I am 66 years old and of sound mind. This will reflect my true wishes made freely without coercion. He looked into the camera. Maya Lawson is my daughter, not by blood, but by choice. I raised her from age 11, and she has been the greatest joy of my life. Everything I leave her, she has earned through love, loyalty, and 2 decades of being the family I chose. His expression hardened. To Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa, you abandoned a child. You forfeited any claim the moment you walked away. You don't get to come back now and demand what you never valued. The video ended. My father exploded. This is elder abuse. He was sick. Mr. Grayson was evaluated by a psychiatrist 2 weeks before that recording, Philip said, sliding a document across. Dr. Collins confirmed full mental capacity. There is no basis for challenge. We'll contest anyway, Vanessa shouted. Jonathan Pierce leaned forward, his voice cold. You have no rights, and if you contest, you will lose. Per the will's terms, any unsuccessful challenge results in you paying all our legal fees, which will be considerable. Blackwood, silent until now, closed his briefcase and stood. This case is unwinnable. I'm withdrawing my counsel. You can't, my father started. I can, and I am. Blackwood walked out. I stood. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me, furious, desperate, defeated. You want to know why you got nothing? I said quietly. Because you deserve nothing. Dennis saw through you. This was never about love or family. It was about money. And now you know your greed cost you everything. I picked up my bag. We're done here. Don't contact me again. You're not part of my life. And you never will be. I walked out, Nathan and Jonathan beside me. Behind me, I heard my mother sob and Vanessa's voice shrill. This isn't over. But it was. Outside, the January sun was bright and cold. I stood on the sidewalk and took a breath. It's over, I said, my voice cracking. It's really over. Nathan pulled me into his arms. Julia appeared. She had been waiting downstairs and wrapped her arms around us both. You did it, Julia whispered. He'd be so proud. But the victory felt hollow because Dennis wasn't here to see it. He wasn't here to celebrate, to laugh, to tell me I'd handled it well. He's still gone, I whispered into Nathan's shoulder. And finally, I let myself cry. Dennis's handwriting was precise, measured, the same careful script I had seen on birthday cards and grocery lists. The letter was dated December 20th, 2024, 5 days before my parents showed up with cameras and luggage. He knew. I sat at his desk and read. Page 1. Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't feel guilty about the money. You earned every cent by being there, by showing up to Sunday dinners, holding my hand during chemo, making this house a home. You were the daughter I chose, and I'm honored you chose me back. My vision blurred. I turned to page 2. Page 2, practical matters. The house is yours. Keep it, sell it, whatever feels right. But check on Mrs. Garcia. She's getting older and doesn't have much family. She loves you. Jonathan has all my legal documents. Trust him. Your inheritance after taxes will be about $6 million. Save half, spend half. And Maya, use it for good. Help people who are forgotten, like you. I read this twice. Help people who are forgotten. Then on the last page, the third, write this story. Not for revenge, but because other forgotten children need to know they are not alone. They need to know that being abandoned does not mean being unloved, that starting a new family is possible. You are a writer, Maya, a damn good one. So tell the truth. Publish it. Let your voice reach those who need to hear. I am so proud of you. Be brave, little one. Remember, you don't need their approval. You never do. Oh, my love. Daddy. The signatures struck me. Daddy. Not Uncle Dennis. Not Dennis. Daddy. This is the first time he's written that. I hugged the letter to my chest and cried. February and March were a time of litigation. My biological family contested the will, claiming undue influence. Jonathan responded with a 40-page document citing psychiatric reports, video evidence, and documented instances of stalking. The judge dismissed their case in 10 minutes and then ordered them to pay $15,000 in legal fees. Jonathan called to tell me about it. I laughed for the first time since Dennis died. He would have loved it. He definitely would have, Jonathan agreed. The will was finalized at the end of March. After taxes, it was $6.2 million. I donated $500,000 to a scholarship fund for orphans in Seattle. The remainder was allocated to investments. I retained the house. In April, I relocated back, transporting my belongings from the apartment I had shared with Nathan. He assisted me with packing, assuring me that our relationship wasn't over, merely undergoing a transition. I kept Dennis's possessions, the bookshelves, the coffee mugs, the armchair by the window. Not as a memorial, but as his home. Our home. Mrs. Garcia visited with soup. "He loved you so very much," she said. "You made his final years the happiest of his life." I commenced therapy, twice a week initially, then once. We discussed grief, guilt, the hollow sensation of triumph mixed with loss. Healing wasn't a straightforward path. Some days I felt all right. Other days, I couldn't even leave my bed. Each Sunday, I visited Dennis's grave, bringing white roses and speaking to him as if he could hear me. Perhaps he could. Perhaps love endures even after a person is gone. Mid-April, I opened my laptop and began to write. It started with the note on the refrigerator. "We'll be back soon." 6 weeks later, I had 15,000 words. Every memory, every moment, every lesson Dennis had imparted. The abandonment, the courtroom, the accusations, the reading of the will, the orange juice glass, the journal, and the wedding where he walked me down the aisle. What it signifies to be truly seen, to be chosen, to forge a family from nothing. Caroline Morgan, my editor, read the manuscript and called immediately. "Maya, this is extraordinary, but are you certain it won't reopen old wounds?" "I'm sure," I replied. "It's what he asked me to do." 2 weeks were dedicated to editing, fact-checking, and refining. I altered some names, compressed timelines, but the core truth remained intact. The final title, The Man Who Saved Me, a 20-year story. Scheduled for publication. Friday morning at 6 a.m. Thursday night, I walked through the house alone. I stood in the kitchen where Dennis had poured me orange juice in real glasses and told me that things exist to be used, not feared. I sat at the table where we'd done homework and celebrated birthdays. I climbed to my old room, still painted a soft gray, still housing the desk where I'd penned my first articles. Then I went to Dennis's chair by the window and sat down. The leather was worn smooth from years of use. I could almost feel his presence, the way he'd sit here with his coffee and the newspaper, humming off-key. I pulled out the journal he'd given me that first Christmas. The leather was cracked now, the pages softened from countless turnings. I flipped to the first entry, written in my 12-year-old hand, December 25th, 2005. I am in this house. Then I turned to the last blank page and wrote, May 8th, 2025. I kept my promise, Dad. I had told the story. I closed the journal and placed it on the side table. Outside, the city lights twinkled. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives. Some forgotten, some searching, some wondering if they would ever belong. Tomorrow, they would read my story and perhaps, just perhaps, they would know they weren't alone. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m., then midnight. It was Friday. The article would go live at 6 a.m. I sat in Dennis's chair, my father's chair, and waited for the sun to rise. I wrote what I knew. Within 24 hours, 500,000 people read it. Within a week, 2 million. This time, I held the pen. The article went live at 6 a.m. on Friday, May 9th, on the Seattle Times website. The Man Who Saved Me. A 20-year story appeared with a photo of me at Dennis's grave, placing a white rose on his headstone. By noon, it was trending nationally. Comments flooded in, people sharing their own stories. This is my story. I was abandoned too. Thank you. My uncle raised me. He died last year. I wish I'd told him he was my real father. I'm 11 years old and my parents just left. This gave me hope. That last one made me cry for an hour. Over the next week, I received 5,000 emails. People sent photos of their chosen families, friends who became siblings, neighbors who became parents. They recounted courtroom battles and funerals crashed by people who'd never truly cared. They said I'd given them permission to stop apologizing for protecting themselves. NPR called. I said yes. Full circle from years ago. This time, I spoke about Dennis, about the significance of being chosen. Your story resonates because it's universal, the host observed. And everyone deserves to be seen, I replied. I declined most other requests. I'd told my story. I didn't need to perform grief for clicks. But I did accept the book deal offers. 3 publishers reached out. I was considering it, expanding it into a full memoir. He would want you to, Nathan said. I know, I replied. I'm just not ready yet. Then wait. It will still be there. I didn't hear directly from my biological family, but through Julia's research, I learned what had transpired. Vanessa deleted all social media within 48 hours. Stephen and Rosalie went private. Phoenix neighbors recognized them, and the commentary was scathing. You abandoned your daughter. Shame on you. Stephen lost clients. Rosalie stopped attending church. Vanessa relocated to Tucson. They never contacted me again. Just silence. It was the conclusion I had hoped for, not a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet erasure. I was finally and completely free. Life continued. I kept working, writing my column, covering stories for those who needed a voice. The viral article opened doors, speaking invitations, panels. But I was selective about which I accepted. Nathan and I began discussing marriage seriously. Julia received a promotion. Mrs. Garcia turned 85, and we celebrated her with a party in Dennis's backyard. My backyard now. I planted roses. In June, on what would have been Dennis's 67th birthday, I bought white roses at Pike Place Market and drove to Volunteer Park Cemetery. The headstone was simple. Dennis Michael Grayson. He chose love. Hey, Dad, I said, arranging the roses. The article did what you wanted. 6 million people read it. They listened to us. The wind rustled through the trees. I've received offers to write a book. I think I'm going to do it. I smiled. You'd probably tell me to negotiate a good advance. Save half. Spend half. I pulled out my phone and typed, I miss you. I wish you were here. Then I deleted it. He knew. By September, I had made my decision. I signed with a small press specializing in trauma memoirs. The advance was modest but fair. Take a year, they advised. Write it right. So I sat at Dennis's desk, my desk now, and wrote. Not just the article, but the entire story. Every detail, every moment, every lesson. The note on the fridge and the orange juice glass, the courtroom and the journal and the wedding, the attacks and the will reading, grief and healing and chosen family, what it means to be forgotten and what it means to be found. Now, sitting here with September's sun streaming through the window, I'm typing the final lines. The story you just read, this is it. This is the memoir. I wrote it because Dennis asked me to, because I needed to, because somewhere out there, there's an 11-year-old kid wondering if anyone sees them. I see you. Build your own family. Write your own story. Claim your place. Don't wait for anyone's permission. You are worth choosing. You always were. I close the laptop and breathe. I did it, I whisper. From downstairs, Nathan calls. Maya, dinner's ready. Julia's laugh. Come on, we're starving. Mrs. Garcia's warm voice. I made your favorite, mija. I walked toward the voices, toward the family I chose. In the dining room, the table is set for 5. 4 plates, 4 glasses, 4 chairs with the people I love most, and 1 empty chair at the head of the table where Dennis used to sit, with a single white candle burning. Not sadness, just acknowledgement that you're still here. Nathan smiles. Julia raises her glass. Mrs. Garcia pats the seat beside her. I sit down and we eat, and we laugh, and we tell stories, and the candle flickers like a heartbeat. Life goes on. Love remains. Family, the real kind, the chosen kind, endures. And for the first time in my life, the story is completely and forever mine. I told it. Now I get to live it. Looking back at my story, I realize that family betrayal isn't just about the people who leave. It's about the ones who stay and choose to harm you when you're most vulnerable. My biological family didn't just abandon me once. They came back 3 times to attack what I'd built. That's family betrayal in its cruelest form. But here's what I learned. Family revenge isn't about destroying them. The best family revenge is living well, building a life they can never touch, and refusing to let their toxicity define you. When they crashed Dennis's funeral, when they contested his will, they wanted a reaction. The truest family revenge was my silence and my success. My lessons to you. First, don't wait for people who left to validate you. God puts the right people in your path. Dennis appeared exactly when I needed him most. Trust that. Second, blood doesn't make family. Love, loyalty, and showing up. That's what makes family. Don't waste years trying to fix people who chose to break you. Third, document everything. Keep records, save emails, take screenshots. When family betrayal escalates to legal warfare, evidence is your shield. Fourth, your story is your power. They wanted to control the narrative. I took it back by writing the truth. God gave you a voice. Use it. Fifth, grief and victory can coexist. I won the legal battles, but I still lost Dennis. Allow yourself to feel both. Sixth, set boundaries without guilt. You don't owe toxic people access to your life, your success, or your peace. God honors boundaries. Seventh, the best inheritance isn't money. It's the lessons someone teaches you about worth, resilience, and unconditional love. Don't be like me in one way. Don't wait until someone's gone to tell them they're your father. I said it at his grave. Say it while they can hear you. But do be like me in this. Fight for your peace. Protect what you've built. And when they try to take it, stand firm and let the truth be your weapon. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you experienced family betrayal? How did you find healing? Your story might help someone else feel less alone. Don't forget to share this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, chosen family, and finding strength in hardship. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your time and attention mean everything.